second headsail trimmer and is responsible for tailing the new jib sheet in the tacks, trimming the guy downwind, and backing up the headsail trimmer. The tailer, because he's also a trimmer, is the ideal person for calling the approaching breeze upwind to the other trimmers and the helmsman. The best tailors are agile and are usually the strongest person on the boat.
Just check this back here.
Preparation for the tailing position is the same as the headsail trimmer. It requires checking and packing all of the headsails before the race, making sure all the sheets and guys are led properly, and all other associated gear is in good working order. If you're sailing on an unfamiliar boat or crew, coordinate with the trimmer as to what is the best way to travel through the cockpit, hand off the sheet in the tacks, and to transfer from sheet and guy in the jibe. In the pre-start, the tailer should trim on the starboard side, while the trimmer trims on the port side, with each tailing for the other when not trimming. It's also important that each trimmer call leeward boats in clock and distance for the helmsman. On the final approach, take the jib sheet to the rail while the trimmer grinds the sail in, handing off the sheet when the trimmer signals. Then hike as conditions merit. Upwind, the tailer should call the approaching breeze by giving the amount of seconds to a puff or lull, its relative strength, and for how long it may last, so the trimmers know how best to respond. The tailer can also call approaching shifts if possible. In attack, the tailer tails the new jib sheet while the trimmer releases. When attack is called, the trimmer comes off the rail first. The tailer follows, but should stay on the rail until the tack begins. When it does, rotate inboard, taking the new sheet while crossing the cockpit. As the trimmer releases, tail as fast as possible using wide and long arm pulls, making sure they're low enough so the sheet does not come off the winch or foul the handle. When the sail starts to fill, put your full weight into the final pull, leaning to windward while solidly braced for the heel. On the trimmer's call, release the sheet and hike as conditions warrant while setting up the new sheet on the winch, with the minimum number of wraps for tailing in the next tack. On the last starboard tack to the windward mark, take the lazy jib sheet off the starboard winch from the rail while the bowman raises the pole. Then load the guy and pull all the slack out of it after the pole is up. In light air, pull the spinnaker tack to the end of the pole as long as the sail does not start to fill. As the boat bears away, move inboard to the winch. In most cases, it's better to over-square the pole on the set. In heavy air, be prepared to make a fast, hard grind on the set, as you won't be able to pre-guy when it loads. After the hoist, and the boat is at full speed, set up for the next jibe by stripping the leeward jib sheet off the port winch and loading the lazy guy, leaving enough slack for the bowman to jibe. Then place the handle in, facing inboard. During a tack set, tail the jib sheet through the tack as normal and quickly hand it off to the trimmer. Then unwrap the old jib sheet from the starboard winch, load the guy with a winch handle in, and square the pole as the spinnaker is raised. On a no-pole hoist, free fly the spinnaker from the guy. Switch to the starboard spinnaker sheet and pull out the slack once the pit clears the halyard winch. Then ease the guy so the foredeck crew can make the pull. Once the pull is made, transfer back to the guy. In heavy air, the pit can help you in the transfer by easing the sheet while you take up the guy. For a jibe set, the tailer and trimmer switch sides before the jibe, so that the tailer releases the jib on the port side while the trimmer pulls it in on the starboard side as the boat jibes. After releasing the port jib sheet from the winch, load the port guy and square the pole back during the hoist after the pole is up. If the foredeck is slow on the pole hoist, free fly the spinnaker on the lazy sheet, then transfer when the pole is up. Downwind, the tailer becomes the guy trimmer and must stay in tune with the spinnaker trimmer. In general, the pole should be trimmed so that it's perpendicular to the wind direction and the spinnaker luff. In a lull, the boat heads up and the pole goes forward. In a puff, the boat heads off and the pole is squared. If the trimmer has trouble keeping the spinnaker from collapsing, be prepared for a jerk ease, about an arm's length with the guy. However, a common problem sailing dead downwind is a leeward break that requires squaring, not easing the pole, to keep the spinnaker from collapsing. In a dip pole jibe, square the pole back as the boat bears off and check that the trimmer has taken up the slack in the lazy sheet. Once the pole was tripped, strip the winch to one wrap and go to the new winch, which was already loaded with the minimum wraps and a winch handle in. After the pole is made and the outboard end is up, pull hard on the new guy and grind it if necessary to get it squared back. Finally, load the minimum wraps on the lazy guy winch, check that there's enough slack in it for the jibe, and place the handle in. In an end-for-end jibe, square the pole back as the boat bears off. Then switch with the trimmer, taking the old sheet and ease it fast enough to rotate the spinnaker through the jibe. The spinnaker's rotation should match the helmsman's rate of turn.
I've got the new guy.
With more rotation needed in light air and less in heavy air. Once the pole is made, square the guy for max trim.
Pole's coming back.
When approaching the leeward mark for a windward drop, make sure that the starboard jib sheet is loaded on the winch with the handle in and the minimum number of wraps needed to keep the sheet from slipping when tailing upwind. Also check that the lead car is in the correct upwind position. Before the hoist, make sure there's enough slack in the jib sheet to keep the jib luffing when it's hoisted so the spinnaker stays full. After the jib is up, take the slack out of the weather sheet so it doesn't interfere with the foredeck crew. Once the pole was tripped away, free fly the spinnaker from the guy. When the spinnaker's lowered, make sure the foredeck crew has control of it, and strip the guy winch, grab the sheet tail, and tail it in from the rail as the boat rounds the mark. In a leeward drop, set the jib sheet up as before, but take the tail to the rail. As the spinnaker is dropped, strip the guy off the winch when the foredeck crew has control of the spinnaker, and tail the jib sheet from the rail. For a jibe drop, load the port winch loosely with the jib sheet and no handle. Then put one wrap of the starboard jib sheet around the base of the guy winch by pulling the entire sheet around the winch underneath the guy. After the trimmer takes up the slack in the starboard spinnaker sheet, strip the guy off the winch, finish loading the sheet, and put the handle in. During the jibe, release the port jib sheet and tail the starboard one, taking the sheet to the rail while the trimmer grinds in. Tailer has a few tricks as well. For a dip pole jibe, mark each lazy guy where it meets the winch drum once the bowman has pulled the slack forward needed for a jibe. After each jibe, load the new guy winch at this mark, leaving the slack for the bowman. The most important thing to remember as a tailer is to stay in unison with the headsail trimmer at all times.